Welcome to the Sales Development Podcast, the only audio forum focused and dedicated to helping sales development professionals get better at their jobs and push the practice of sales development forward. This is a place for practitioners in the trenches every day getting it done, whether they're called SDRs, BDRs, ADRs, or others. It's a team charged with creating pipeline out of inbound lead activities and outbound approaches. My name is David Delaney, and I'm the host of the Sales Development Podcast. If you've got subjects you'd like to hear covered on the show or guests you'd like to hear from, hit me up via email at david@tenbound.com or LinkedIn or Twitter, or be sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, or wherever you found us. Good morning. I am here with my esteemed colleague, Gabe. How do you pronounce your last name?
Moncayo.
Moncayo. I did not want to murder that on on the podcast. So, Gabe Moncayo, the CEO and founder of AlwaysHired. Thank you so much for making some time for the Sales Development Podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I've been following your work, Gabe, for a while, and talking to the students and the participants that have gone through the AlwaysHired program. It just seems like, the work that you're doing is making a huge impact on the sales development community here in the Bay. And, definitely wanted to get your message out to the listeners and just let them know what you're working on and, how the programs go. And, obviously any advice that you have for sales development managers or sales development reps that are, struggling every day to get it done. So thanks a lot for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Why don't we just dive in? Tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and how you got involved with AlwaysHired. Bring us up to speed.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually originally from the Bay Area. Grew up playing sports and being in team environments from a very early age. Both my parents are also psychologists. So being around the human psyche and just like people's problems and things like that is just something that I grew up with. And fast forward to more of my work career, I've been doing sales training, sales management, sales leadership for the past 10 years. Started my career doing political fundraising. So for 2.5 years, I was responsible for about a $500,000 annual budget, or quota, I should say. And yeah, so I transitioned into sales leadership. I lived in New York, Chicago, Austin, Los Angeles, here in San Francisco and Oakland, building sales offices for different companies at different stages, startups, publics, things like that. So that's a little bit about my background and how I got to where we are today.
Yeah, thank you. That brings us up to speed. And, tell me about AlwaysHired. How did you come up with the idea? What was all involved in getting something started and getting some initial traction?
Yeah, absolutely. As I was answering that, I was like, wait, I didn't say anything about AlwaysHired.
That's okay.
As part of the consulting business, so I was kind of doing that gamut around the country. I came back here. I was doing some consulting. And I realized that the number one request has shifted from like script writing and like sales operations to sales talent. And I was just getting emails more frequently from these VPs or CEOs or different HR leaders asking, hey, Gabe, do you know anyone that we could hire for a sales role? And I got a couple of my friends, just casually jobs when the first emails came in, but they kept coming in more and more frequently until it was like twice a week. And then on the other side, in the consumer market, so to speak, in my friend community, I became a local resource for people who wanted to get coaching advice or career advice. And the reoccurring theme I heard was basically something like, hey, I have experience, but I can't get an entry-level job. Or, hey, I have a degree, but I can't get an entry-level job. And here I'm realizing that the people are telling me they can't get jobs. Corporations are telling me they can't find people to do their entry-level jobs. The supply and demand already exists. It's just that the filtration system connecting the two clearly is broken. So did a little bit more research. Turns out it's called the skills gap, which is one of the biggest problems our economy and our society has because it's people not working, which is a really big deal to families. So we ran a pilot. I downloaded all the sales trainings that we had, that I had from work and from working with other people. And we did a free boot camp where 12 people showed up, 11 of them graduated, and 10 of them got jobs. And that was like those were the early days, and that's when we decided to go all in for the business.
Nice. That's great. I mean, it seems like there is a huge need for sales development reps. I know in the Bay Area, but also, in all these different hot spots that are springing up around the country. And there's no sales major necessarily that they can take in college. There's not a lot of boot camps and things like what you guys are doing. So it just, that skills gap, it serves a huge need that we have in the community, both on the business side and also personally with people just trying to get their foot in the door at these companies.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that because, as a sales leader, my thought process was always, rising through the ranks in sales. And that traditionally was the next step. And the reason I contextualize that is because, everyone's trying to get into tech because tech is everything. Tech used to be an industry, but now there's fintech, there's ed tech, right? There's biotech. So tech has really started to penetrate every single industry and market that there is. But anyways, there's two entry points into tech, coding and sales. And sales used to be SDR, AE, sales manager. But now, because things are changing and, everyone's starting to just be more fluid in the way they operate, a lot of people go into sales and then move over to customer success. Or a lot of people go into sales and move over to operations. And the reason that's important is because unfortunately, it's almost like a bottleneck where everything has to go through two entry points, which are engineering or essentially entry-level sales. And it's just a really interesting phenomena that's manifested itself as a result of all of this change that's happening right now.
Yeah, and I mean, that's even more motivation for someone to start their career in sales, right? As that entry point. I mean, not everyone maybe has considered, becoming an SDR or going into an entry-level sales job, but it is a great foot in the door to a wide variety, especially if the company is growing. And there's a lot of different opportunities opening up, not necessarily just in sales, but like you said, in service and different parts of the organization. A great example I've seen of that is at a company called OpenDNS, which was bought out by Cisco. We had a big SDR team. And now, as I look at the LinkedIn pages of the people that came through the program, they're literally sprinkled throughout the organization at this point.
Wow.
It's great to see because, we met a few years ago. They came in, worked really hard as sales development reps, and now, they're not only salespeople, but like you said, they're throughout the organization. So it's a great foot in the door. And, one thing about a program like yours is, I'd like to dig in a little bit about the content of what they study, but a lot of people come out of college and they know that they want to get into the tech industry, and they don't know how to code necessarily. So they go, okay, I'll get into sales, but they studied maybe psychology or anthropology like me. They didn't necessarily sell anything, and so how do you guys take someone who doesn't necessarily come from a sales background and put them through your boot camp and get them ready to, hit the ground running as an SDR or as an, entry-level salesperson when they come out?
Yeah, absolutely. And 40% of all of our students are new college grads. So it's definitely something that is really important to us. The first way to think about it, I would say, is there's a process to learning. So, what did you learn in psychology? What did you learn in anthropology? You probably learned that there's a cause and effect for the scenarios that you're looking at. And that's really what it is, right? I mean, you're learning history, you're learning data, you're learning cause and effect, you're learning about a specific piece of information. And if you can apply what you've learned from the framework of learning to sales, then it actually starts to become kind of easy, because sales is not about slick talking. Sales is not about being the most aggressive person, right? A lot of people, and I would agree, being aggressive helps, but that's not a core component. So, if you start to think about sales as a process and a framework, and that there's a strategy to everything that goes on, and it's not people just shooting from the hip, then that's, I think, the first step to understanding that, like, hey, sales is for everyone. Anyone can do sales, excuse me, but it's not for everyone, right? So it's like any human being can do sales because there's a process to it, but part of that process is like really high rejection. It's kind of like baseball. The Hall of Famers in baseball still fail 70% of the time. The Hall of Famers in sales fail 90% of the time. So it's just part of the game. So I think those are some of the ways we help someone with a degree in a different background, understand how they could start to be successful in a sales role.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point to touch on, because I think I heard something about a baseball analogy where if you hit 3 out of 10, you get into the Hall of Fame or something like that. So exactly. You basically fail 70% of the time,
right?
And you're a superstar, and it totally correlates to sales, because say you're a customer, a prospective customer, you walk into a shoe store, and the guy says, "May I help you?" 99%, no, I'm good. Even though your shoes have holes in them, you haven't had new shoes, and as soon as you walk in, no, I'm okay. And then 5 minutes later, oh, can I try these on? It totally changes. So I think that's a huge point. One of the things that people struggle with when they become SDRs is, you have to anticipate that most people are not going to be interested that you talk to. And that's a huge mind shift from,
right.
How you're brought up when you come up. If someone says no, you just say, okay, and you walk away, because that's polite. But now we're taking these people and going, okay, here's a phone, here's a computer. Like, you just go out and have everybody say no to you all day, and hopefully, you'll get 3 out of 10, and you'll make your quota. So, are there specific do you guys have a class about that, or is it learned by doing? How do you get someone into that, being okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of it is through our screening process. So we put people through a full interview and a full interview process. And, interviews, just like anything new, sometimes, there's curveballs, and how people handle those curveballs, I think, says a lot about, their character and their intentions. And that's one way that we set the tone for the class. And then once people are in the class, the environment, we try to utilize really every different type of learning resource we can, because learning in itself is so important. But like anything that's really good, it's also hard to get to, right? I mean, it's something that everyone aspires to have, but few can obtain. So to really create an opportunity where you can learn anything in a short period of time, right? Because we're going from 0 to 100 in 150 hours of coursework at this point. So whiteboard training, lecture style training, group activities, one-on-one activities, feedback sessions. We do mock pitches. We do also live cold calls. So there's an entire portion where at the end of class, everyone has to, see if they've retained the knowledge. And we actually partner with real tech companies that have our students do cold calls on behalf of them. And then the students have to log that activity in Salesforce. And then while the cold calls are happening, there's a dashboard everyone can use to see who's the call volume leader. And then when that's over, we analyze all the data, and the students tell us who was the hardest worker. And if people have been following along well, when we ask the question, who's the hardest worker, and they look at the data, they say, oh, the person with the most calls must be the answer to that. And they just start to understand what it's really like in the real world. So I'll take a break there, but those are some of the different resources that we use and the different styles that we use to make sure that not only are we transferring knowledge, but there's actually retention of knowledge being executed on as well.
Nice. Okay. That's exactly what I was wondering about, because yesterday I was looking, there's like a triangle of retention, I guess, when you think about learning. And I'm not really describing it well, but there's a triangle where the top 10%, right? Yeah. The top 10% is reading. So if you read something, you retain like 10%, right? And then it goes all the way down to 90% if you actually do it and you're coached along, and then if you become the actual teacher and you're coaching people. So it's like that learn by doing with a guided approach, I think it's what's missing a lot of the time. Because if someone doesn't go through a boot camp like your program and they go into a startup, for example, that's just sort of by the seat of their pants, there's not a lot of training, and the manager just says, okay, 100 calls, smile and dial, like, and then he goes off somewhere, and the guy's just sitting there like, what do I do? I mean, they have to learn the hard way, right?
Yeah, and that happens. Yeah, that happens, and that's something. It's interesting. Some of the people that are well researched in their interview process, when they meet with us, they ask us questions to proactively solve for that, because it's starting to be known that there's two types of companies. There's the real companies, and then the people that, we joke about it, but like the people that are just running an operation out of their basement, right? And not literally, but like it just feels like there's no infrastructure there. So students actually ask us like, hey, how do you help us define what's a good company for us? Because like I'm excited to get into tech, but I'm seeing that there's so many variants to it. How do I know where I can plug myself in and not have to, restart in three or 4 months? So definitely something that comes up a lot that I think is important to get ahead of.
That is really important, because actually an SDR who is on the job hunt right now reached out to me, and she had 3 different opportunities kind of in play for her next career move. And one, she was just like, what do you think? And so I looked at it, and one was your mega corporation, that in the tech field that has been around for a long time, and they've got everything organized. One was sort of middle of the pack, and then one was a straight up like basement, guy in his garage, two engineers. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting to have such a wide array. And when you're first entering the workforce, to not know, I mean, all 3 of the logos look great, Like, they're really nice logos, and that's about all that I know. And, I just told her, if you look at the mega corporation, they're going to have the learning and development, like a robotic, machine. I mean, they've probably got 100 people who focus on the training and development and stuff like that. The middle one, they might have a framework, but a lot of it's going to be learned by doing. And then the basement one is like, you're going to have to figure it out. They're going to look at you and say, how do we run a sales development team? So it's like, what do you want to do? And, I guess it kind of depends on your personality.
Did they end up picking one?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think it's still in play right now. Yeah. But for me, like, I remember one of my first sales jobs was at a big corporation. It was called EDMC. I don't even know what it stands for anymore, but I mean, it was a mega corporation, and literally, like, you got hired and you were in the home office for a couple of days, and then they flew everyone out to Pittsburgh for a 2-week intense training program that was just like, 10 hours a day of along the lines of what you're talking about, but specific to the company. Right. With all these like 20 somethings. I mean, we just partied most of the time, but but I still remember some of the stuff from that program. So, I guess it's, as you look at these opportunities, which one fits you the best at this point in your life? Are you more entrepreneurial? Are you more looking for, soaking up knowledge and things like that?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's really well said, actually. It's very on par kind of with what we tell people often, which is the bigger companies are a little bit more money, sometimes harder to get into, more stability. And the smaller the company, obviously, it's the higher risk, higher reward. So depends if someone wants to get to management faster or move out of cold calling faster, things like that.
Yeah. And some companies, there's a large, cloud company. I won't mention the name, but it's based in San Francisco. And it seems like they're very big on getting really bright people in the door. It's a really tough interview process, but once you're in and you do well, there's a lot of different opportunities, like you were talking about, to move to different parts of the business depending on where your strengths are. And that's exciting. But you're following the playbook that somebody else wrote, and you just, as long as you follow that and you work really hard, you're in good shape.
Right.
But you're not making it. So if you're a very entrepreneurial person, you might feel boxed in by a situation like that.
Yeah, very true.
The other quick thing is there's another more old school technology company further south of San Francisco. I won't say their name, but I remember an SDR that we had on our team at OpenDNS came from that company. And I always was picking his brain, like, how did they have it set up over there? Like, how do they keep on track and, keep focused? And he was like, dude, it's a freaking mess, man. like they use antique databases and Excel files with, old phone numbers, and you're calling companies, and it's a total mess. So, that I just bring that up because, not necessarily these big companies, like, they might look great, on the outside, but they could be just as much of a mess as a startup. So
I mean, great points. So spot on for diving deeper. Good interview questions we suggest people ask to identify that, because a lot of these corporate companies will have pilots, or they'll acquire other companies, or they'll test things. And if the test doesn't go well, right, then the corporate company might say, okay, well, we're going to focus on our original product. But good questions to ask are, hey, is this a new hire, or is this hire replacing someone? So is this a new role, or am I replacing someone? And then based on that information, asking, well, basically why? And if you are replacing someone, identifying what scenario would have had to have been different for a different outcome to have manifested itself. So definitely make sure in an interview process someone feels comfortable asking these types of questions, so they don't walk into the scenario you just laid out.
Yeah, I mean, and just having those questions prepared. I mean, that's another value of doing a boot camp like yours, because I've interviewed hundreds of sales development candidates, and it's literally like you get to the end of your spiel as the manager and you go, do you have any questions for me? And you'd be surprised when they're just like, no, I'm good. It's like, when can I start? I'm just like, well, don't you want to know anything about this company?
It's so true. We actually literally prep people to ask me questions in the interview, and some people still get shy or they're not well prepared. And then exactly, you're like, I could be a monster. This could be the worst place ever. And you're just gonna, you have no questions. Okay.
I know. Yeah. And I think, it comes down to kind of what we were talking about earlier, just being, first of all, not having the knowledge of what to ask. So, we've been around for a while, and we've seen good things and bad things. And, so you and I could probably come up with a bunch of great questions, but if someone's just out of college, I mean, they haven't been through a bad company or a bad situation and stuff like that. So so they just don't know what to ask, and they also might be afraid a little bit. Like, if I ask a dumb question, or I'm too pushy or something like that, the manager might not like me. I might not get the job, and that type of thing. So
so true.
It's tricky. But anybody who's listening to this podcast who's on the job hunt or possibly going out to look for SDR jobs, I would say talk to Gabe, bring in some questions, and try to get a feel for what you're walking into and what the situation is, because maybe if you ask the right question, it turns out it would have been not a good situation for you anyways. And it's good that you didn't get the job. It's counterintuitive in a way.
Yeah, and you touch on a pain point of our ecosystem and just society, which is someone coming fresh out of school, might not have that knowledge, and it's like, why isn't there a specific interview course where you can ace it, right? and or maybe a course where, you know, they teach you a process for like how to accomplish a specific goal depending on what your major is on. And just a random tangent that just popped into my head, because, you know, one of the things now that I'm spending more time with investors and just, you know, talking to different people, I'm realizing that other markets in other, you know, countries to the United States, they're really desirable, but no one's really been able to execute. You know, United States tech wants to get involved more in China and Japan. China is the largest consumer market in the world. So, you know, there's reasons they're trying to take advantage of that. But our educational institution, you know, or our educational institutions, plural, excuse me, they're not pumping out the right type of content to make this person who graduated equipped right now to become a business leader, to go after those markets in the long term for their career. And I just thought that was interesting, and I'm really hopeful that education will start to make more of a shift. You know, now that the private sector is getting involved in, you know, education, it's forcing, you know, incentives to be more aligned. And obviously, I'm biased in my opinion, and I think it has to be done right and delicately. But I'm hopeful and excited that more of these resources will be available, because these people are so smart. It's just like they just need to read a certain piece of information for it to like click, or for them to see it another way, and then all these doors open. So sorry for my rant there. You know, it's just a real passion of mine.
I agree. I mean, I think I'm a big fan of Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad guy, and he's very focused on how slow the education system is. His specialty is financial education and trying to make people understand how the world works on the finance side. But something he notes a lot is the education system is very slow to respond to the realities of the world. And for example, most people don't get a solid financial education as they come through school, and now they get into all kinds of debt and, you know, credit card debt and student loan debt, and they're stuck. Yeah. And then, you know, to your point, the United States is so vast and such a, you know, complex economy in itself. I don't think that we spend enough time preparing business leaders to operate in an international environment. I completely agree. You go to Germany or EU countries where, you know, the next country speaks a different language. They're much more attuned to operating in different environments like that, and their education system is set up to empower that. And now, you know, they're probably eating our lunch. I don't really know. I don't have anything background, but I mean, some of these other countries are probably, you know, much, you know, more savvy on how to execute in an international environment. So yeah, that's interesting. But just to shift gears a little bit, Gabe, I know that you know, AlwaysHired is going really well. I've talked to some of the graduates. They're doing great. The companies love it. What's next for you and, you know, your plans with the program and with the students and the events you're doing? You know, what are you working on now to bring it to the next level?
Yeah, the hashtag is world domination.
Nice.
Love it. Yeah, so things are going really well. Thanks for asking and bringing it up. It's definitely an exciting time and a time that I wasn't really expecting. You know, since we started the business, a lot of every single domino we've ever needed has just like fallen into place, and it's always just like felt right, and it's felt easy, and not easy and like it's not a lot of work, but you know, we were constantly getting positive feedback, and when we got negative feedback, we were pretty real with ourselves to try to drive change quickly. So what's next is, you know, introducing some online components. I think is important for growth, at least for like, you know, quizzes and light training and stuff like that. But even historically, you know, quizzes are done in Google Docs, you know, and that's what a bootstrap startup does. But now we got some investment. We got the leaders, and arguably the leaders in higher ed education from a venture capital standpoint, University Ventures, you know, the venture capital firm for universities.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah. They were leading our Series Seed, which is pretty cool. So we went right to series over angels, which I think strategically makes sense because it helps put more really experienced people in our corner. But anyway, so for 2017, we're just really solidifying our process. We're going to be growing to about 500 students in 2017, and in early 2018, the plan is to start going nationwide. So we have about 14, 15 crazy months ahead of us. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But so that's what's coming up on the horizon.
Nice. Well, congratulations. I'm really excited for all the positive feedback and getting a few bucks in your pocket so you can make it even better. And if any of the, we have a lot of SDRs who listen to this and also people who are thinking about becoming SDRs in the Bay and just all over the place. If they want to get in touch with you or they want to check out the program, what's the best way? Just head to the website, or what's the best way for them to get that info?
Yeah, absolutely. And just so people know, we've had a lot of SDRs that get jobs and come to us just for training, or people that want the sales portion of support as well. So anyways, the website's AlwaysHired.com. My handle for virtually everything online is Gabe Moncayo. So just my abbreviated first name and my last name. So at Gabe Moncayo, and you guys can also inbound on our website. We have a really awesome admissions team, not salespeople at all, just like really, really cool people. But anyways, so that's how you can find us online.
Very much more consultative. They're consultative. They're not gonna strong arm you into joining, but they'll point you in the right direction. That's great. Yeah, and that's another point. I mean, if the training stinks at the company where the SDR is and they're not getting what they need, check out AlwaysHired, or one of the boot camps, because, hey, take your career into your own hands. Don't just sit there and wait around and complain. I don't think anybody who would listen to this would be that type of person. But, take their cousin. Yeah, I mean, take your education into your own hands and get with Gabe and get it done, because it's all there. I mean, it's not just if you're thinking about becoming an SDR. If you are and you need to get ahead, this is a resource. So Gabe, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it, and good luck with everything. And we'll go ahead and sign off.
Thanks. Yeah, this was a blast. Glad we got a chance to connect.
Nice. Talk to you soon.
All right, bye.